Hey, this is Chris, and I'm here today with a video preview for God of War 3. We first saw the game earlier this year at Sony Santa Monica Studios, and then at E3 we got a chance to play 20 or 30 minutes of the game. And while the team is still keeping some of the details under wraps, we've played enough of it that we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to see come March 2010. The story in God of War 3 picks up right where God of War 2 left off, with Kratos basically working his way up Mount Olympus with the Titans, going to take the fight straight to the gods. We don't really know where it's going to go, but you can only imagine that some gods are going to die, and all kinds of blood's going to be spilled. Now, Sony Santa Monica promises that this is the end of the trilogy, not necessarily the end of the God of War franchise, but the story that was started in God of War 1, continued in 2, is going to finish in 3. There will be a solid ending, is what we're promised, and so we're all actually very happy about that. We want to see Kratos again, but we're glad this is coming to a definitive ending here. Now, the most important thing in God of War is obviously the combat, and from what I've played of the third game, it feels identical to the first two. Kratos actually may feel slightly heavier, but the combat mechanics work the same way. You know, you got your light, heavy attacks, you can jump up in the air, do spin moves, you know, grapple people. They have the same kind of, grab dudes, rip them in half. You know, all the blood is obviously still there. But again, the combat feels identical to the first two games. So if you've played those, or even the PSP variant, you'll pick this one up right away, which is great. One thing that is kind of new, though, is that you can swap between weapons at any time and on the fly. So you can build combos where, you start with the blades and then go to the cestus, and then go back to the blades, and, so you can create all kinds of really cool combos that way. In previous God of War games, you fought maybe about a dozen guys at a time. With the power of the PS3, we're going to see battles of 50-plus dudes on the screen at the same time. So what you're going to see are, lots of skeletons, lots of zombies, whatever they have, coming at you, fighting you all at one time. Kratos has new moves where if he gets surrounded by guys, he can kind of throw them off. To fight these big groups of guys, you do have a couple other moves. One thing that you can do is pick up a dude and essentially use him as a battering ram and just run through guys and plow them off cliffs or whatever. And that seems to be pretty useful from what we've seen. Now, again, at the end of God of War 2, Kratos was with the Titans. They were going to Mount Olympus, and the Titans are definitely in this game, and they play a huge part of what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be seeing. But the Titans are promised to be pretty cool. They're absolutely gigantic. I have a feeling that the one that we saw at E3 is kind of on the smaller scale for them, but the epicness that has been in God of War in the past is definitely going to be here in the third game. Now, speaking of large enemies, one thing that you can do that's kind of cool is ride some of them, such as the Cyclops. You can get on his back and then kind of stab him a bunch of times to control where he's going. He's a big, unwielding guy, so you don't have, perfect control like you do over Kratos, but you can use him to easily take out a bunch of dudes. As you continue to stab him to control him, though, you're hurting him, so, the more you use him, the more you're weakening him. And then eventually, once he's pretty much dead, you can go rip out his eye, get some more power-ups, that kind of thing from God of War 2. Now, Mount Olympus is a giant, giant mountain. And in order to have Kratos scale this thing, in a reasonable amount of times you can actually finish the game, you'll find things that are being called right now the Icarus Ascent. And when you're in this thing, there's going to be like rocks falling at you and girders to dodge and things like that going on. It's actually, from original screenshots I saw, I didn't really know about it, but when you play it, it's actually a very cool a moment of action. It does a really good job of making you travel really fast, but it's kind of this really cool, intense moment where Kratos is kind of like rushing to the next sequence of the game, and it's all done pretty well from what we've seen anyway. Now, in terms of graphics, the first two games were obviously on the PS2, and so moving to the PS3, the game's going to clearly look better. Starting with Kratos on the PS2, Kratos was about 5,000 polygons. Here he's a good 20,000 or so. His model, textures, animations, and basically all of the stuff that makes up Kratos apparently would not even fit on the PS2's memory. And even if you go back and you compare him to the CG scenes from the first two games, he looks better than that, which is actually pretty amazing. And one last cool piece of technology is what Sony Santa Monica is calling zipper tech, which basically means that if you cut an enemy open, his organs kind of dynamically come out of his body and go all over the level, which is pretty cool, but obviously not for the weak-hearted. God of War 3 is expected to hit the PS3 in March of 2010. We're all very excited for it. This pretty much wraps up everything we know, but for absolutely intricate details on the game, head over to IGN.com.